afternoon. Thank you for coming over. This is a fundraising for DACA students. South County Democratic Club, Surge, and Siren are sponsoring this program. I want to thank Booksmart for their support and letting us use their facility. Gavilan College currently has over 230 undocumented students enrolled in its classes. These are students who call Santa Clara County their home. These are the students who are honest about their status and have put their faith in their government, and their honesty would allow them to contribute to the community where they grow up. As we have recently witnessed, we cannot always rely on our leaders to do what is morally right. It has become increasingly important that our local communities take the initiative and protect all of its members. County of Santa Clara has teamed up with Silicon Valley Community Foundation to set up a Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival DACA emergency fund. Today is your opportunity to show your support. All donations made today to Silicon Valley will be matched. Today we will hear about DACA program and its impact on our community. Our speakers are City of Morgan Hill Mayor Steve Tate, Member of San Benito County Board of Supervisor and activist Robert Rivas, Council Member City of Gilroy and candidate for Assembly District 30 Peter Leroy. Spanish, sorry guys. Robert, have you announced it or no?
I will.
Okay, so not a camera. And of course, our wonderful Rebecca Armendariz, she's an activist. Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival. What is DACA? In June 15, 2012, the Secretary of Homeland Security announced that certain people who came in the United States as children and meet several guidelines may request consideration of deferred action for a period of 2 years, subject to renewal. They are also eligible for work authorization. Deferred action is a use of discretion to defer removal action against an individual for a certain period of time. Following our announcements on Homeland Security webpage, we are no longer accepting initial requests for DACA, but would adjudicate initial requests for DACA accepted by September 5th, 2012. We will no longer approve advance to parole requests associated with DACA, and we are only accepting DACA renewal requests received by October 5th from current beneficiaries. So thank you for your show of support and our local dreamers. Now, Mr. Tate, could you please, guys, we have these wonderful books, and please, they're only $15.99, and again, the wonderful Booksmart, they said of every sale they would donate a portion of this book to our fund.
So we purchased those with the checkout.
At checkout, yes. I'm sorry. No, I'm
Well, good afternoon, everybody. DACA affects all of us. You know, we've had DACA kids working at our swimming pools in the city of Morgan Hill. It is it's something that you just kind of have to support. I don't know how you avoid it. We had our I don't know what her title is, Chicky Mahia. I don't know. any of you know Chicky, but she did a great thing the other night. She had a session over at Central High School where she found a few kids that hadn't yet applied for the continuation and got them signed up. So she's spending the money that we're raising right here. So that's great. City of Morgan Hill, if you're not aware, last December we came forth with a statement of support for the community. We aimed our whole planning this year at more inclusiveness, more celebration of diversity of what we have here in our community. But in December, when we came out with a statement, it was kind of triggered by a statement that was made in Mayor Sam Liccardo of San Jose, who writes a monthly newsletter. And he wrote something similar to this that kind of triggered, well, why aren't we doing that? Why don't we reassure our residents that they are protected, that they are taken care of? And what we really wanted to emphasize was that they don't have to fear anything. With all the threats that are in the atmosphere, especially right after the election last fall, there was a lot of fear in the air. And we want people to look at our police officers not as opponents or somebody that's after them or somebody that will somehow do them harm. We wanted them to feel that our policemen were their friends, were their partners, were there to take care of them. Morgan Hill, in our outstanding police department, we have 39 sworn officers for 45,000 people that live here. The minimum recommendation for population, officers to population is 1,000. So obviously we're not there. But we have a better safety record, a better everything record when you compare statistically with other police departments through the kind of community policing that we get here in Morgan Hill, where we are partnered with the community and where our officers are trained to be out there making friends with people, not enemies with people. So, we wanted to emphasize that our officers, with that kind of population of officers under what it's supposed to be, we don't have any time to go help ICE or anything like that. That's not our job, that's not our business. And we wanted to make sure that everybody understood that we're not going to do anything like that. And that basically any kind of hate crime or anything that's committed here would be very much prosecuted right away, pursued and prosecuted, and that any violation of people's constitutional rights, we will fight in conjunction with all the other cities and everything else. We will fight to make sure that constitutional rights for everybody, including absolutely everybody, are protected. When we say we want to be an inclusive community that celebrates, we mean everybody that's here, whether they have housing or they're homeless, whether they're where they live, what they do. We want everybody to be part of this community and to feel like community is them and they are protected. So that's what we did, and we did that in December, and then January, the end of January, we have our annual retreat where we set our goals for the year, and we just got on the theme of being more inclusive, celebrating diversity. We have a concert coming up, I think it's next weekend, celebrating Hispanic Month. They have a bunch of Hispanic entertainers sharing their culture with us over at the amphitheater at the CCC. So encourage you to participate in that. Any questions? Okay.
Has the ICE office in Morgan Hill any updates on that we should know about?
You know what happened with the ICE office in Morgan Hill? Good. Thanks for reminding me. What happened with them was they wanted to build some holding cells. So they were coming in and telling us they're going to build these holding cells. And we met with them and told them, that's not part of the zoning. you can't do that. We will not allow it. It's not zoned for that kind of thing. And they panicked because they had this plan and they were going to do this, and it sounded like they were going to be back within a week with all kinds of plans to show us or convince us of something. And honest to God, we have never heard from them since. So they do have their office over there. They do whatever they do over there, but they don't have any holding cells. And never will.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Rebecca.
Robert.
All right.
Thank you.
So I'm very excited to be here. You know, I couldn't think of anything more important to do on a Sunday afternoon. Obviously, my wife could list probably 10 or 20 things I should be doing, like mowing the lawn or fixing our house, doing something, right? No, but in all honesty, she knows. You know, she's excited that I'm here, and she knew how important it was and how important this is to me. But certainly, I want to thank Mayor Tate. Certainly, thank the mayor and the city council here in Morgan Hill for your leadership. Certainly, the leadership by taking a stand against ICE and working to quell the growing fears and anxieties of undocumented immigrants here in our, not only in our region, but in Morgan Hill. And so certainly, someone from San Benito, we appreciate everything you guys have done, you know, to set a positive message going forward. And so certainly all your efforts are important and appreciated. And so a lot of you don't know who I am. My name is Robert Rivas, and so I'm the San Benito County Supervisor. So you're probably wondering why I'm here. And so I'm here for a lot of the same reasons why you're here. It's because I care, and I know all of you care. And so, you know, I, like many other local elected officials throughout the country actually, have become very vocal and have actually done everything we can to take action and get involved when it comes to immigration policy. And so this past Tuesday at our Board of Supervisors meeting, I was extremely proud of my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors because they unanimously approved a resolution that I had proposed. It was a resolution to support Dreamers. It was a resolution to support DACA policy. But most importantly, it was a resolution to encourage bipartisan comprehensive immigration reform, which can get lost in this whole discussion about our DACA policy, which I'll talk about in a second. And so what I was so impressed about our meeting was after I had laid out the facts and the reason why I had proposed a resolution, we didn't have a single member of our audience or in the public provide public comment against the resolution.
Nice.
It's not to say that there aren't people out there that don't support the resolution, which gets to my next point. Because once we broke for lunch and I was going to my car, I was sought out by an older gentleman. And so he approached me as I got to my car, and he basically thought that it wasn't necessary, or he asked me, why was it necessary for you as a supervisor in San Benito, for local government, for our local government as a county board, to meddle in federal affairs? He said he thought it was a waste of local taxpayer resources and a waste of his time as a member of the public that we had to address the issue. And so without hesitation, I basically told him, look, we have a president, we have an executive administration, we have a Congress that has failed to do anything about immigration policy in this country. And I reminded him that this is an administration of President Congress that instead of doing something about immigration have rather instilled fear and injected hate into the conversation when talking about our undocumented communities. And I told him that as a result, myself as an elected official and elected officials everywhere, we have no choice. This is our issue. And we have to do what we can to do everything we can to protect our undocumented residents. And so it absolutely wasn't a waste of taxpayer money. And so, and moving forward, we have to understand that it's going to take local action. It's going to take us in this room and throughout the state to mobilize local communities and local residents to send a message to Washington that it's important for us to protect our undocumented residents. And the reason I say that is, look, I'm Latino. I was born and raised in California. I came from an undocumented immigrant family. I was raised in Piscinas. It's a small rural jurisdiction, or a little town in South San Benito County. I grew up in farm worker housing. I remember our only bathtub, the first 8 years of my life, was this metal tub. And I remember my grandparents and my single mom would rush and take pots of boiling water and dump it into the tub so my brother and I could have a bath. I was cared for by my mom. I was cared for by my grandparents who had immigrated here in the 1960s. They were undocumented. They immigrated here, they took care of us, and guess what? They were farm workers, right? They were farm workers, not by choice, but because that's what was available at the time when they immigrated. And that's why I care about this issue. That's why I'm here. That's why I care about immigration. That's why it's important for me as a local supervisor, the oldest grandson of a farm worker who never imagined that his grandson would have the opportunity to be on the board of supervisors. This is a man who worked in the fields for 40 years, who was exploited, who worked in very difficult conditions. That's why it's important to have a voice on this issue. And so showing our support and fighting to preserve this DACA policy is extremely important, don't get me wrong. Because from a moral point of view, no child born into this world should have to be confined or limited to borders. And certainly to punish individuals for what they can't help being or doing is absolutely wrong. And it's wrong because punishment implies responsibility and accountability for one's actions and choices. Clearly, children who through their parents' choices end up on one side of a border or another cannot be penalized for these choices, obviously. And so they deserve every opportunity to work, to study, and enjoy the highest quality of life like any other resident and citizen here in the United States. And so how can we, you really have to ask yourselves, how can we deny our young undocumented these rights? How can we deny them these rights when our society and our country has benefited from the circumstances in which their parents entered this country? Which for me, in my example, and many undocumented immigrant families in this region and this state, is the decades-long dependency of rich agricultural fields and the backbreaking, substandard labor that they willingly endured to be here and to provide that opportunity for their children, such as myself. We need this DACA policy because it's important that we continually reaffirm our support for this policy and policies such like it. But we can't settle for only this policy because it's a policy that falls far too short. And I say that because DACA provides temporary relief for less than 10% of all undocumented immigrants in this country. 10%, less than 10%. So we can't settle for extremely limited and temporary immigrant protections. It's not right. And to be extremely honest, offering 10% of this protection to, or offering this temporary protection to less than 10% of our undocumented immigrants is unacceptable and grossly inadequate. So DACA is an important policy. It's a great first step, but it certainly doesn't go far enough. We need to work together to demand real comprehensive bipartisan immigration reform. I'm proud of the actions of Morgan Hill. I'm proud of the actions of a lot of the communities and local governments in our region. I'm proud of the work we've done in San Bernardino. I'm proud of our state legislature in Sacramento for taking the most aggressive stance in protecting and standing up for our undocumented immigrants. Because on paper, this certainly is a federal issue, but that's not going to stop me from taking action. It's not going to stop me from doing everything I can as a local elected official to support our undocumented immigrants. I've been working closely with the ACLU. We're going to have a Know Your Rights storm in San Bernardino High School on October 26th. But why it's so important to not lose sight of our greater picture of comprehensive immigration reform. And I want to share a story with you really quickly. I was in Salinas this week. I spent a lot of time there. I met with a housing representative. And they're currently doing a needs assessment. They're doing a needs assessment about farm worker housing and basically what they can do to, what they want to do is, or learn is how great the need is in order to provide the nexus to build a housing. And so in doing so, they've had a lot of testimony from undocumented immigrants. One testimony that was shared with me was about a mother And the reason I share this is because we could read in the New York Times, we read in the papers, we read in the news about all these forms of exploitation of undocumented immigrants. They live in the shadows, that they're afraid to come out. And because of, their undocumented status, they have to endure these substandard conditions, these living conditions, working conditions. This stuff isn't happening, out of California. It happens right in our backyard. And this one story really hit me. So this woman living in Salinas, she lives in a 3-bedroom house with 5 other families. Every family is assigned either one of the 3 rooms, or a living room area, or an open area in the house. Each family is assigned, or there's a schedule, and each family is assigned a certain time where they can use the restroom. They can use the kitchen. They can use any of the amenities that the house has to offer. This woman was brought to tears when talking about how her 2 sons had endured multiple urinary tract infections because they couldn't relieve themselves when they had to. It wasn't on their schedule. And what's heartbreaking about this mass exploitation in this situation in Salinas was that each family paid $1,200 for this. $1,200. And certainly we have a housing crisis in this state. But this is the form, this is what we're talking, this is why we're here. Certainly to protect our dreamers, but also we can't lose sight of the fact that we need to really advocate and demand a solution to this egregious problem. So I'm great to be here. I'm certainly going to step over to the computer and make a donation. I've certainly shared it on my social media page, and I encourage all of you to as well, because this is important to support our dreamers and to do everything we can to provide the resources to support them. So thank you guys. It's great to be here.
Questions?
Question?
Peter,
I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh,
Question.
yeah. Do you have a comprehensive immigration reform expectations list or something like that? Because I remember back around 2000, there was some bill that they tried to get through, and it died in Congress for one reason or another.
Right.
But it had some good ideas in it, but I don't know if they were all good.
That's that's very
So what's our goal?
That's an excellent point. And really what the goal is to include policies such as DACA. And so learning what those learning what those goals are, learning what comprehensive immigration reform is, it's changed because this has been an ongoing issue for nearly 20 years. And so certainly I'm very good friends with Congressman Jimmy Panetta. He's a close family friend, and so certainly I spent a lot of time with him. And he recently got appointed to the bipartisan. It was a committee in Congress that was created for bipartisan legislation, and so bipartisan efforts on critical issues. And one of the issues he talked to me that they're trying to work on is immigration. And so that's this is certainly a question I can ask him to see what is our policy goal when we talk about comprehensive immigration, because comprehensive immigration reform, because certainly our goal seems to always be changing. Is it amnesty? Is it providing a level of relief for children? I want to see a pathway. I think we all do want to see a pathway of the citizenship for all of our undocumented. But how that looks like, we don't know. And so sort of having that discussion is extremely important. But it seems like and that's why the point I made was DACA is very important, but we can't get just wrapped up in one policy. We've got to start to talk about what we want out of a comprehensive immigration reform bill. Because it's just not, it's not being done. It's not being talked about. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter LaRomunoz. As Suzanne mentioned, I'm a council member in the city of Gilroy, as well as a candidate for Assembly District 30 in 2018. Yay! I'm not going to speak very long. I think the 2 previous speakers did a great job hitting a lot of the important points. And one of the things that really stuck out to me as leaders, something that they mentioned, a thread throughout, was that of service. Was that we serve the community. We don't serve each other, we don't serve ourselves, but rather we're here to serve all, and there's no distinction. When we take the oath of service, when we're elected, we don't simply say, I am going to represent the city of Gilroy, but the undocumented workers on that. The immigrants, I'm not going to support. We support everybody. That is our job, and that is our service. You know, immigration is incredibly personal to me, similar to so many of us. You know, my grandparents were immigrants, came over at a young age to work, came from Latin America. My grandfather came fleeing political persecution in Nicaragua. So I can appreciate the sacrifices they made to be put in a position where, frankly, they were able to afford me opportunities they never had. And I remember my father, in particular, something that my father told me. He doesn't really talk about it a whole lot. My dad's a pretty quiet guy. But he shared with me that when he was growing up in San Benito County, his very first memory was actually picking apricots in one of the orchards around town. That was his very first memory. He used to actually sleep as a little infant in a little peach crate, those wooden crates, and that's where my grandmother would tuck him in and lay him down and roll around his sleeves together. He was eventually able to work his way from the fields, ultimately to the cannery in downtown Hollister, and then got a scholarship to UC Berkeley. Now he's a lawyer. And again, he's put me in a position where I've had things that he could himself never dream of. So for me, public service is a very powerful thing for me as a way of doing that. When I think also of this issue in particular, of immigration reform, and DACA specifically, I looked at the book here with Julissa, who talks about her own journey as an undocumented immigrant, and now she's a Wall Street executive. It reminds me of a trip I just took to Washington, D.C. this past week. I was part of a team that went out to D.C. with young entrepreneurs, many of them who were immigrants themselves. Entrepreneurs who are working here in our country, who are building American jobs, who are providing opportunities for other Americans, regardless of immigration status. And we took the message to members of Congress, to members of Senate, and yes, even to the administration, about how important immigration reform really is, and comprehensive immigration reform. And I think the previous two speakers did a great job talking about morality, the importance of this on a human decency and morality level. That is so incredibly true. I think there's another argument to be made as well. And that is, this is a very real economic bottom line issue for our country. We do this, one, because it's the right thing to do, but two, because it also strengthens our own economy here in the United States. Let me just give you a couple of quick stats. There are companies that are known as unicorns. These are companies that have been started recently that are valued at over $1 billion. Did you know the majority of those unicorns were started or are currently being led by immigrants? If we chase away the best talent, the people who have worked the hardest to get here, who have endured the most risk and danger to get here, we suffer not just as a culture, not just as a society, but our bottom line is a very real loss. So these are important issues to speak to when we have conversations with people who might not necessarily see the moral side or understand it entirely. I think it's important also to reference some of the facts, because this really does impact all of us. When I think of those young entrepreneurs, one in particular, Pedro Espinosa, who runs a firm up in San Francisco that offers software as a service. And he told me that he came to the United States from Peru when he was very young. And he went through school, he was educated here, he was paying money in from his taxes on the jobs that he worked, and now he's creating American jobs. He is so much a part of that American dream, and I can tell you, that was so incredibly impactful when we were talking with elected officials. They were able to see that. And I think sometimes in this debate, for a lot of people who just don't see it the way we do, they don't understand the human side of this. So it's incredibly important, I think, that we continue to hammer this message, to be those advocates, and to remember that we are advocating on behalf of real human beings. I think that's so incredibly powerful. So for me, again, this is a very important issue. I really do want to thank Mayor Tate for his leadership here in Morgan Hill and other regional leaders, and especially for the prayer day that we had on Holy Thursday before Easter, earlier this year out in front of the ICE building. Just the amount of community outreach and support for that event, and the media it garnered as well. You can tell we had struck a nerve. We found something that was important and something that people responded to. So that was incredibly important, and I'm proud to have been a part of that as well. Again, service. What was so nice about that event was that elected officials were invited to wash the feet of immigrants within our community. Those that are oftentimes living in the shadows, the lowest, the debased, those who are scorned, they were the ones who were receiving our gift of service. And it is a gift to offer that service and have that received. So that's why I'm here. I'm so incredibly proud to see everyone here. We know this is an important issue. It's a national issue. But this issue really is born in our neighborhoods, in our communities. So thank you all for being here. Are there any questions I can address? If not, Suzanne, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure, Rebecca.
I'll turn it over to Rebecca.
We should point out that council member Caitlin Yakumovich has joined us as well. So.
Thank you,
Give me more time
I can if
to
you want.
prepare. Go ahead to you. You want me on the mic, Susan?
You're loud enough.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone, community members, allies, friends. It's great to be here with you. I'd like to first say thank you. Thank you for your participation and your generosity, for being courageous during these really trying times and standing up for what is right. It's heartwarming and inspiring to see our community coming together in a way that I've never seen before. My family's been in Gilroy for 4 generations. My kids are 5th generation Gilroyans. And although it's unfortunate that it's under these circumstances where our most vulnerable community members are under attack, it still is inspiring nonetheless. The young people and their families who are under attack right now have done nothing other than sacrifice and struggle to contribute to our society, to our economy, and to be part of what is great about America. They are now living with their futures in the hands of a dysfunctional Congress and the tiny hands of a madman tweeting policies in the White House. Despite their accomplishments and their contributions, they and their families could be taken from their homes at any time. Just this past week, 27 families were torn apart by ICE raids in this county. And we saw hundreds across the country and hundreds in California. But thanks to allies and community members like yourselves and volunteers, the rapid response network that we're able to create was able to provide those families from our county with legal representation so that they have a chance, they have an opportunity to maybe stay here, to continue working and be with their families. They were shipped off, many of them, to Richmond or over to Adelanto in the middle of San Bernardino County, which is like a 10-hour drive. But still we're able to get legal representation out to them and provide them with some opportunity to retain their lives here. The DACA recipients who've approached me from our area are nurses, teachers. You know, they come from every walk of life. They are also kids that just, you know, work at fast food restaurants and at the outlets, contribute to their families who are going to school. We don't want them to have to suffer through what these other families are suffering through, and we only have 6 months. The first step that we can take today, we are doing. We're helping them reapply. We're helping those who can't afford it. The next step, of course, is to make sure that the program is protected or recreated somehow, making it better, making sure we have comprehensive immigration reform. So all the phone calls that you're doing, all the emails, standing up, the rallies that we've been able to have here in South County and throughout the country, they are really making a difference, and I think we can see that. And like I said, although it's under these unfortunate dark times that we're coming together, we are providing hope and beacons of light for the people in our community who are being affected by this. So it's an honor to be here with you all. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple more things. Suani, she's going to read a statement from State Senator Bill Monning. And Caitlin, are you interested to just say a few words? Or?
Sure, I'm happy to.
Okay, so after Sonia, please.
Bill really wanted to be here today. Unfortunately, his sister has had a stroke. She's also suffered from mental illness. A few words about Bill. He is the most honest, amazing politician I have ever met in my life, and I'm really, really honored to have been of service in his administration as a delegate to the State Central Committee for his district. He walked with Cesar Chavez. He's in daily contact with, what was? Dolores, I'm sorry, Dolores Huerta, and they were activists in their own way in the Salinas Valley and helping the farm workers there, immigrants, illegal and legal, be able to stay in this community. So I'll read this quickly. Friends, I regret that I can't join you today, but I'm with you all in spirit as a strong, strong supporter of DACA, immigration reform, and the protection of immigrant workers and families in our state. Let me share some accomplishments in our end of session work in Sacramento. We passed a balanced budget that included over $30 million in support for nonprofit organizations that are offering legal services to immigrant children and other immigrant workers. At the end of the session, we passed a budget supplement that allocates another $30 million just to support DACA, protected students and community members in the face of the presidential decree to reverse DACA. At the end of the session, we also passed SB 54, which now sits on the governor's desk for signature. We expect he will be supportive of this new law that directs local police and sheriffs not to enforce federal immigration laws. While some have called this the sanctuary state bill, it actually does not provide sanctuary to immigrant workers. It simply confirms what the law already says. Immigration laws are federal and should be enforced by federal authorities and not local police agencies and sheriff's departments. There are a significant number of amendments that will allow for local police and sheriffs to work with ICE agents in specified circumstances to protect public safety, but they are narrowly crafted and pertain to felony warrants issued by court and other emergency circumstances. This bill is designed to build trust between immigrant families, law enforcement, as Mayor Tate mentioned, and protect local communities from crime and criminals. The California Police Chiefs Association withdrew its opposition and took a neutral position in recognition of some of the amendments. The bill is still pioneering in the nation as it affirms the will and commitment of the state of California to honor and protect law-abiding immigrant families from random searches, detentions, and deportations. Despite these important California initiatives, including budget support, we must remain vigilant in monitoring the excesses of the Trump administration and working to unify our communities, like we're doing today, on our shared common humanitarian principles and shared human values. To all gathered today, I thank you for your commitment, your presence, and your activism. I will leave you with a Pablo Neruda, I hope I pronounced this right, Neruda quotation that was shared by Dolores Huerta in an event in Salinas last week. They can cut down the flowers, but they can't stop the spring from coming. Working together, we are the spring. With great respect and solidarity, Senator Bill Monning, State Majority Leader.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Yakumovich. I'm City Council Member of Morgan Hill. I didn't expect to speak today, so you'll have to bear with me as my thoughts may be kind of scattered. I wanted to start by saying that I'm really proud to be a part of the council this year and our commitments that we've made to really be inclusive of all groups in our community, and really to single out groups that have traditionally been underrepresented and underserved and try to be a voice for those groups. And you know, it's not just the statement that we made and the resolutions that we've passed, but we also signed on to the amicus brief that was filed from the County of Santa Clara about what's the word for we are not a sanctuary city, but on behalf of sanctuary city. Sorry, I also have a 2.5-year-old that woke up at 3 a.m. and I'm pregnant, so I've got all kinds of mom brain going on right now. But we've really worked on reaching out to this community that is my community. It's the community that I grew up in, and it's the community of my neighbors and friends. I grew up in Morgan Hill. I grew up near Jackson School, Jams now. And the way that the schools were districted at that time is that I went to school with a lot of farm working kids. And it wasn't unusual to me because it's all that I knew. And so whether I went to the Rodriguez's homes on the weekends and helped them pick strawberries, or I went to the Hanson's home on the hill where, you know, the dad had a leased car, and that I thought that was so weird that his company gave him a fancy car. But you know, I feel like I grew up in the foothills between these two different kinds of communities, and that's all that I knew. So that's why I have become interested in immigration. I went to law school. I studied immigration law. I studied refugee law, and I went to work for Zoe Lofgren after law school. And I really wanted to bring her up because she's our ranking Dem. You know, she's our congressperson. She's the ranking Dem on the immigration subcommittee, and she's been working for immigration reform for years and years and years. And every year she comes forth with a plan for immigration reform. And I'm glad that we're talking about it more now. I'm glad as a community we've rallied behind it, but the ideas have been there. You asked about what that means. We've been trying to attack different issues piecemeal. And one of the things that we've done is we've said, hey, maybe if somebody enlists in our army and if they're willing to go die for us, maybe we should give them a path to citizenship. Maybe that would be a good idea. Since we have immigrants that are coming from other countries that are excelling in STEM fields, maybe we should create a path for citizenship for students that want to come here and they want to study the STEM fields. So there are different things that we've tried to attack because I think we think they make sense to people that don't know. But we're not doing a good job of taking the story out from San Benito County, from Gilroy, from Morgan Hill, and spreading that message to the rest of the country. So the one thing I felt like I could add today is we're all on the same page. We're all there. We all know immigrants. We all have been affected by immigrant communities. They're the people that we love. They're our neighbors. But we have to do a better job of going outside of our comfort zone and talking to congresspeople and elected officials and just normal people that are from different places so that they can get to know the stories and the people that we know so intimately, because that's the only way that we're going to make a change. We're already there. Our community is already there. So we have to try to get the communities on board. And so I hope you'll help me figure out how we can do that. And I'm certainly happy to help in any way that I can. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all the guest speakers. Thank you everyone. Please, if you get a chance, take a look at the book. It's a wonderful book. It's for $15.99, and Booksmart is planning to contribute a portion of this sales to DACA. So, fantastic. And here my wonderful friends are sitting here. They want your money.